The structure of the family has long been a cornerstone of communities across the world. For many, the family is the first source of support, guidance, and identity. Whether it's the family we're born into or the one we create, these relationships are at the core of our human experience. In today's video, we turn our focus to families in the Black community. The Black community has experienced particularly high rates of single parent households and family fragmentation. But what are the forces at play that have led to such a significant number of broken homes within Black communities? How did this issue become so prevalent? Is it merely a cultural pattern, or are there deeper systemic factors at play? Black families have historically faced a range of economic, societal, and structural issues that have affected their stability and opportunities for prosperity. These challenges are deeply rooted in the legacy of colonization, slavery, systemic racism, economic exploitation, and discriminatory policies. While Black families have shown incredible resilience in the face of these challenges, they have been disproportionately affected by barriers to wealth, health, housing, education, and fair treatment in the criminal justice system. It doesn't matter what part of the world you're from. The Black people there most likely experience white oppression in the form of either slavery or colonialism. See, the backbone of systems of slavery and colonialism is the Black workforce laboring for the economic benefit of white people. The forced separation of Black families during colonization and slavery was therefore one of the earliest contributors to disrupted family structures, which saw many Black women being left as primary caregivers in single parent households. Patterns of fragmented family structures can become cyclical, with children from these backgrounds replicating similar family dynamics in their own lives. Breaking this cycle requires intentional efforts towards creating stable family environments. As much as we've made great strides in the fight against inequality, we unfortunately still see this cyclical pattern perpetuated through systemic bias in financial institutions, discriminatory lending practices, and predatory lending, all of which play a role in limiting the economic mobility of the Black community. As a result of societal conditioning passed on from generation to generation, Black people have for centuries been barred or limited from accessing the benefits that have helped white families build generational wealth. Addressing these issues requires structural reforms that tackle the root causes of inequality and provide equitable opportunities for all families to thrive. Part of why white people continue to thrive as a race is because preservation of the family unit is important to them. They are able to pass down traditional values and transfer wealth intergenerationally. I think because we grew up watching marriage being a nightmare for the women in our families, a lot of us somewhat decided to rebel against the concept of marriage altogether. That has led to the baby mama culture of women bearing children for men prior to them making a serious commitment to them. While marriage is not a magic wand in and of itself, it does tend to offer certain legal protections that can benefit children in the family unit. And not only that, but as women, you are less likely to end up in less than ideal situations if you only give the gift of your womb to men who have proven to you that they are ready to commit and for the responsibility of child care. Your odds of winding up with a man who does not abandon his parental responsibilities are much higher when you're dealing with a man who's willing to go the extra mile to send his family to meet your family, to ask for your hand in marriage, pay lobola, and plan an entire wedding before impregnating you, as opposed to a guy you are casually hooking up with who has never even taken you out on a real date. The responsibility to build better, healthier family structures for our next generations does not rest solely on us, but women do have a lot of power in it that they often tend to not acknowledge. It is not just cycles of economic hardship that are passed down in Black families, it is also the generational cycles of absent fathers. The issue of absent fathers in the Black community is one that has been widely discussed and is often misunderstood. While the narrative is frequently oversimplified or framed in a way that places blame on individuals, the reality is far more complex. The prevalence of absent fathers in Black households is not always just a personal choice. It is influenced by a web of historical, economic, and social factors. Although it can be argued that the disengagement of fathers in the Black community is because of broader systematic and historical contexts which shape their actions, I would like to emphasize, however, that it is important to interrogate personal responsibility on their part. Traditionally, fathers have been regarded mainly as providers. Because fathers experience this social pressure to ensure their family's survival as an indicator of their manhood, it therefore follows that they tend to disappear when they cannot meet this standard. Black men in particular. Not only that, but for many young men, it can be extremely difficult to take on a fatherhood role which has not been demonstrated to them by anyone. It's a vicious cycle of men that never had present fathers and do not know how it is to take responsibilities, doing the same thing with their own children. So, how do we break it? We stop spreading the belief that women possess an innate ability to look after children and establish natural bonds with their offspring, whereas men don't. We drop materialist conceptions of fatherhood and masculinity and raise men who do their share of parenting work besides being ATM machines. We socialize men to understand that children are not an extension of the women who carry them, such that when the bond between their fathers and mothers is broken, the children are also rejected as part of the separation. Your responsibility towards your children continues even if you are no longer attracted to their mother. That is why it's important for young men to exercise sexual responsibility and discipline, because temporary pleasure can have lifelong consequences. And your refusal to take on your responsibilities as a father affects the development of children and leads to a whole host of other social challenges. I don't think people understand the extent of the psychological effects deadbeat dads have on their children, which is why they joke about it. The resentment, the loneliness that children feel due to having an absent father and a mother who is busy working twice as hard to make sure the child is taken care of. Kids grow up with misplaced anger, which statistically shows that they will be more prone to violence. Girls grow up with daddy issues and live the rest of their lives trying to find a father figure. They end up committing themselves to men with displaced anger that use and abuse them, impregnate them, and leave. Do you see the cycle? Someone in the family has to make the conscious choice to break it by doing things differently. That person should be you. Infidelity is one of the leading causes of divorce. The impact of infidelity can be far reaching, affecting not only the couple involved but also the children and extended family. It creates a hostile family atmosphere that feels emotionally unsafe for all members. It challenges the core principles of trust and unity, often making it difficult for families to remain intact. The affair often results in increased conflicts, arguments, or passive aggressive behaviors between partners, which can escalate and affect the entire household. While not all families that experience infidelity necessarily break up, the likelihood of long term damage is high. Rebuilding a family after such a betrayal requires immense effort, emotional work, and often the help of therapy or counseling. However, in many cases, the damage is just too great, leading to the fragmentation of family units and long lasting emotional scars. Cheating and broken families can have intergenerational effects as well. Children who witness infidelity and the resulting breakdown of relationships might be more prone to repeat similar patterns in their own romantic relationships. This could be due to unresolved trauma, difficulties understanding what healthy relationships look like, or a lack of strong role models for conflict resolution and trust. There is also the issue of normalized infidelity, where the media portrays infidelity in a way that downplays its damaging effects, potentially influencing behaviors in real life relationships. Cheating is either glamorized or normalized, and when these messages are internalized, individuals may be more likely to see cheating as an acceptable option, and this perpetuates cycles of dysfunction. Violence and abuse between partners or from a parent to a child destroys the sense of safety and security that a home is supposed to provide. Children exposed to domestic violence often grow up believing that violence is a normal part of relationships. They may either become abusers themselves or end up in abusive relationships, repeating the cycle. This generational perpetuation of abuse continues to fragment families and creates long lasting cycles of broken homes. The victimized parent, often dealing with trauma, stress, or depression, may struggle with parenting. They might feel emotionally drained, making it difficult to provide their children with the attention and care that they need, further contributing to the breakdown of the family structure. Victims of domestic violence may eventually choose to leave the abusive relationship for their safety and well being, leading to custody battles, financial strain, and disrupted living situations. Domestic violence can often be intertwined with substance abuse and mental health struggles. The stress caused by systematic racial inequalities and economic hardship within Black communities may exacerbate these problems. Substance abuse can escalate violent behavior or be used as a coping mechanism by victims and perpetrators alike, further destabilizing the home environment. Now, this is not a topic that is widely spoken about. It's still treated very hush hush in Black communities, so I need you to keep an open mind when you're listening to this section. Because women's survival has often been tied to their proximity to men, historically, women have had to come up with creative ways to not only capture but also keep the attention of men. We unfortunately still live in a world where women are unable to provide stability for themselves. So they often still resort to witchcraft and love potions to entrap their objects of desire. If you have never witnessed this yourself, or if you have never been in a marriage or partnership that experienced the devastating effects of witchcraft meant to drive a wedge between you and your partner, this may all sound like a lot of BS to you. But I know there are people who are aware of these things and most probably don't know how to protect themselves and their families from it. A lot of popular traditional healers and sangomas have recently started talking about these underground activities on public platforms. You can search for interviews done by Okoko Maweni, Koko Manzini, Koko Skoteni, and them here on YouTube where they talk about love potions and other dark magic practices they are often paid to do by their clients. This stuff is very real, guys, and it is carried out by ordinary members of society, people that you know in day to day life, people that you go to church with, even. That pretty girl on your Instagram, that famous influencer. That is why it is important to arm yourself with not only spiritual protection but also spiritual education. Learn more about these topics, how people carry out these things, what tools they use, as well as how you can protect yourself. Practice discernment and sexual discipline because eventually your lust will lead you to people with selfish intentions. We have seen entire families come apart because the parents stopped seeing eye to eye. Because someone is suddenly now obsessed with a random new person they just met, they completely lose all sense. and start displaying horrifyingly cruel behavior to their family out of nowhere. I do not intend to reduce the extent of the personal responsibility of black men who create dysfunction or abandon their families because of the selfish pursuit of their desires. But I think it's very important that we start having conversations around the underhanded methods that some people use to undermine the integrity of strong partnerships. Most of you probably know Nick Cannon. For those of you who are not familiar with Penuel the Black Pen, he's a popular South African podcaster. What they have in common with Nick Cannon is that they have fathered children with several different women, often in close succession. Nick Cannon has 12 children with 6 different women, while Penuel has 7 children with 5 different women. Both of them have expressed their belief in having a large family, and they both claim to be present fathers in the lives of their children. Personally, I am of the view that unless someone has certain undisclosed spiritual reasons why they are collecting kids like infinity stones, a person usually finds themselves in such a situation as a result of a lack of sexual discipline and poor relationship building skills. Nick Cannon has himself admitted that most of his children were as a result of unplanned pregnancies. Penuel, on the other hand, often claims that his children were planned. I do think it's important that we call this out since these people are public figures who have the ability to influence social norms. There are a lot of young men who look up to these people, and I think it's important that we highlight the downside of having multiple children with multiple women. First of all, not only is it not financially sound, but when a father has multiple families or children across different households, it becomes difficult to be physically present for all of them consistently. Emotional bonds are built through time and shared experiences, and divided attention across multiple families may leave children feeling like they are not getting the same level of attention or involvement, leading to feelings of abandonment or inadequacy. This can create emotional scars and impact their own sense of self worth or security. Just think about Christmas, for example. How can one man be in 6 places on the same day? The mothers of these children are also affected, often having to handle the majority of the parenting responsibilities on their own. Parenting is not FaceTime calls and sending money every month. Wealth alone cannot replace the emotional presence and guidance that parenting requires. While blended families can function well with mutual cooperation, the challenges grow when there is limited or no cohesive relationship among the various mothers and the children. This lack of unity and a shared family identity can contribute to feelings of division, competition, and emotional conflict. Strong communities often rely on stable family structures to support one another, and fragmentation can weaken these ties. When individuals focus on personal desires over communal ties, it can lead to a breakdown of community relationships. Which brings me to the next point, which is that we are doing polygamy wrong. Polygamy has been a historically significant aspect of many African societies. Traditionally, it symbolizes wealth, status, and power. Men with multiple wives are traditionally seen as having a higher social standing and are respected within their communities. While it remains an important tradition for some, evolving social norms and economic conditions are shaping its role and prevalence in contemporary African societies in a different manner to the way in which it has been. Not only that, but there is also the fact that we are not practicing polygamy in the way in which it was intended. Polygamy seems to have been reduced to a mechanism to fulfill the desires of selfish men. Historically, it was a practice reserved for wealthier men who can afford to marry more than one woman, which was also an economic benefit for the bride's families. But in present day, we often see men who cannot even afford to take care of one wife, wanting to practice polygamy. And not only that, but the way in which the second or third wives are introduced into the family dynamic is often done in a manner which has the effect of breaking down the family unit as opposed to building it. We've seen stories of entire families that went on to discover that the father had married a second wife on social media without their knowledge, or women who discover the second wife when a whole child is now in the picture. It's important for men who want to build polygamous family structures to be mindful of the goal they are seeking to achieve, which is to build a large family unit and support network. Emphasis on build. You cannot expect your first wife to get along with your mistress if you do not conduct your affairs in a respectful manner and introduce them properly. Not doing that will lead to a breakdown in the primary partnership, which will weaken the overall family unit, making it more difficult for the family to work as a cohesive team. Practicing polygamy, when done ethically and consensually, requires careful consideration, open communication, and a commitment to the well being of all parties involved. Also important to note is that younger generations and urban populations are increasingly questioning the value and fairness of polygamy, often associating it with outdated traditions that do not align with contemporary gender norms and equality movements. For me personally, I would like to see the practice of polygamy evolve to where it is socially acceptable for women to also have multiple partners. I really think it's time we started considering alternative relationship models as a society. Because if you look around you, our current relationship model isn't working out so well now, is it? But that's a video for another day.